Welcome to the Friendzy.
Hi, I'm Melissa Carter.
And I'm Jenn Hobby.
The Friendzy's mission is to celebrate friendships over 40.
We believe that women can thrive through authentic relationships, self-discovery, and spiritual exploration.
Our decades-long friendship continues to grow because we are willing to go there and share our truths through life's highs and lows.
And that's why the Friendzy is here to hold space for women who are 40 and older, because at this age, your story matters more than ever.
I'm Melissa, and I have a bad habit of playing with my hangnails, even creating some hangnails, and
Oh, yes, me too.
I play with they're my and I it's like and I have to tell myself, okay, if you keep playing with this, it's gonna cause like bleeding and soreness. You got to go clip that. But I don't know what it is, but
Is it a nervous habit, or is it because you like it to be smooth?
probably a combination of both, because I find that I do it obviously more if I am nervous about something. And I find and I don't drink as much as I used to, but when I used to drink, it like when I'd get tipsy, I'd really like I would have sore fingers the next morning because when I got tipsy, somehow I
Wow.
fixated on it. And so
Really?
anyway, I got hangnails. I just love them.
You know what? I'm with you on the nervous habit. If I'm nervous, if I'm doing a celebrity interview, you better believe that after it's done, I will have a hangnail. And I don't even
Really?
know that I've been doing it.
Yeah. That's
I
why
wonder
yes.
what is that
Well, and
connection?
first of all, I'm shocked to hear that because I'm the one that gets nervous at celebrity interviews. It shows that see, even Jen Hobby sometimes gets
See, I
nervous.
can come off as confident, but underneath, I'm picking my hangnails.
That's right. Just know. That's why you never see her hands during an interview if it's on
Right.
video. I'm just kidding.
That is fascinating
Yeah.
and did not know that about you. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Jenn Hobby, and I am a failing Invisalign patient.
That takes discipline because you're
Failing.
okay, explain to people who may not know what an Invisalign is. I didn't know you were
Well, my
doing it.
teeth shifted when I was pregnant. Do you know this? We've had past
No.
shows about hormones, and when you're pregnant, hormones cause all kinds of strange things to happen, and your teeth can shift amid big hormonal changes. And my teeth
Really?
shifted. Yeah. So I was a kid who had tons of braces, braces, retainers, and, years and years of all that stuff. And then I went a long time without anything. But after I had my kids, my teeth have been shifted and have been shifting. And so I signed up to
Wow.
do Invisalign several years ago and I failed at it then because they put these clear trays in your mouth that shift your teeth and you're supposed to wear them like 22 hours a day. You can take them out for like eating and brushing your teeth and you're supposed to put them back in again. Well, with what we do for a living, working on the radio, doing podcasting, we talk for a living. So I can't
Mhm.
have them in because it creates this lisp and I can't have a lisp while I'm trying to do my radio spot, right? I can't. I mean, it's just like, other professions don't require you to talk as much, and you'd probably be fine doing Invisalign. I got to take them out. And if I'm not talking, I'm eating. So I'm like the worst Invisalign patient. So I gave it up. It was like I was doing it in like 2019, and then all kinds of stressful things happened that year. So I was like, you know what? I can't have one more stress on my plate. So I've picked it back up again this year, and I'm really trying, but I am failing. I take them out and then I forget until the next night.
No,
So
you're
I'm like,
not failing. That's no, that's a negative take on it.
I
You're
know.
it is not Invisalign is failing you by not giving you the options that you need for your lifestyle. But at least you can take it out. I mean, we've witnessed people that got veneers that permanently have an issue with trying to learn how to talk again.
Yes, it will really change your speech. Anything in your mouth can
Yes.
totally change
And you don't think
the
about
way.
that.
No, you don't, because
Right.
you're think about when you speak, your tongue placement, where your lips go, all that
Mhm.
stuff. So, I'm still trying to shift my teeth back to where, they make me happy, but I'm telling you, it's gonna take me years because
Because
I just don't wear them like I should.
right. Well, like I said, and the veneer comment, I mean, I was thinking how many people did I know in radio that got veneers? And I was just like 3 people. So, I mean,
It's a
it's
lot,
it's a
yeah.
lot and it's a consistent issue. So, if you get veneers, just know you're gonna talk funny for a minute. All right, but then we're not gonna talk about veneers or teeth on today's show. We're gonna give Jen encouragement about Invisalign. But we're gonna talk about the uniqueness of multi-race families with our friend author Colleen Oakley. Now, not only is she a best-selling author, she is raising 4 children at the same time, and we're talking younger children. We will talk about motherhood and that balance with life and, life career balance. I didn't say that very well, but you know what? You know what I'm talking. You'd think I had Invisalign in my mouth. The balance of life and career.
I love it. You'll hear Colleen's stories and perspectives IRL in real life.
Oh, look at you being like the hip kids.
That's like what people post on Instagram. IRL. Okay. And just kidding. And you're going to hear how these experiences help her develop her rich characters in her novels. Now, here's what I want you to know is that Colleen is white and her husband, Fred, is black. Now, she is not a race studies expert. She's not a professor on this topic, but Melissa and I thought it'd be interesting to get her perspective because we're also raising young kids. Colleen is a mom raising kids who are biracial, and she has a unique story to share from the heart on this podcast.
And that, yes. And because I think that we're in a culture where you do have to be responsible on how you talk about race, right? And we understand that, but we also we tell you to share your story all the time. And that's what we're doing. We're having Colleen share her story. So she is just a mother who happens to be in an interracial relationship that has biracial kids. And we were really curious for her to talk from the heart about that because we need to have these conversations. And we're going to have one today. So we want to ask you too, have you subscribed to the Friendzy podcast yet? I mean, from all the mistakes you've heard so far today, I mean, why the hell wouldn't you? But we do want you to subscribe and please leave us a review. Maybe not of the last 5 minutes, but please leave us a review. No, seriously, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts. I know a lot of our listeners do that, but you can also subscribe to anywhere you listen to podcasts. So if you are on Stitcher on a road trip, we're there. If you're on Pandora, we're there. I mean, you can ask your home speaker to pull us up. We'll be there. So just know you can find us anywhere.
And if you enjoyed this episode of The Friendzy, please share it with a friend. We would love for more women like you to find out about our show. And Melissa, we are going to dive into this conversation with Colleen Oakley here in just a minute. But first, let's thank our sponsors.
Kit Kats pajamas.
Not only are you kicking cancer, they're also soft and amazing.
Soft on your bum. And on your breast if they're sore. I don't know. And you can get a discount, 10% discount with the code word Friendzy.
Friendzy.
That's right. No.
Use code Friendzy for 10% discount. And then don't forget about checking your veins.
Lifeline. I'm going to go low Lifeline. And if you go to lifelinescreening.com, seriously, that is so I go every year to get my veins checked because don't forget they need loving too. And if you go to lifelinescreening.com, use the code word friends without the Y, but have the Z on the end.
That's right.
They'll know that we sent you.
Use the code word friends.
I snorted.
I like it when you do that. I think it feels like you're just like letting loose.
I'm like, yeah, I'm comfortable. I'll fart here in a second. It'll be fine.
Okay, friends, we are thrilled to introduce you to today's guest, Colleen Oakley. She is a USA Today best-selling author of books like You Were There Too, Close Enough to Touch Before I Go, and her latest, The Invisible Husband of Frick Island. Colleen's novels have been longlisted for the Southern Book Prize twice, and Close Enough to Touch won the French Readers' Prize. Her books have been translated into 21 languages.
That's incredible.
Optioned for films and have received numerous accolades. Colleen is a former magazine editor for Marie Claire and Women's Health and Fitness. She's a proud graduate of the University of Georgia School of Journalism, and Colleen currently lives in Smyrna with her husband, 4 kids, 4 chickens, 2 guinea pigs, and 1 fish.
I didn't know she had all that.
So, friends, please help us welcome Colleen Oakley to The Friendzy. I always want to record you and the things that you say off the air, Melissa Carter. Well, Colleen Oakley, welcome to the Friendzy podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
We are pumped to talk to you today, and we're going to cover all kinds of great stuff. Of course, your amazing books and life as a writer. Also, we want to talk about motherhood because all three of us and a lot of our listeners are really balancing it all. And you are doing it in such a spectacular way. Colleen is a mother of four children, and she's a best-selling author. How in the world is this all coming together? I mean, I think we start there. And then I want to talk about your unique family too.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I love getting asked that question. It's funny. At every book event I do, it seems that, you know, somebody in the audience or multiple people are raising their hand saying, "How do you do it all?" And it's funny. I always say, "How do you do it all?" Because usually it's another mother, you know, who's also working and raising children who's asking me that question. And I think we're all hoping that somebody else has like this secret bullet, right? Like this magic piece. And that person is going to tell me the magic of how to make this work. Because I do think we all are in the same boat. Like we all feel like maybe we're not doing any part of our life like super well. We're all just kind of trying to get by.
Yes.
And
Scotch taping it together.
yeah,
You know?
I'm sorry to tell everyone that I'm the exact same. You know, I just am trying as hard as I can to make it work and do the best I can.
You know, as you say that, it makes me think that I think you answered it perfectly because the Friendzy is going to show people that there is no expert, right? Because I do
Mhm.
think that we are targeted a lot by the literary world when it comes to advice books, because they know that we're seeking that, and they have offerings of people who say they're the expert, but then it's like, well, that doesn't really relate to me and my children, you know. But I do have a follow-up question about your schedule because I'm fascinated by writers and what your writing schedule is like, and you know, what does your day look like with 4 children?
Yeah, so for me, it's I'm lucky now in that all of my children are school age, so I have a very regular schedule where as soon as they go off to school, I sit down at my desk and that's my full-time job. So I am writing generally, you know, from the time they leave till the time they get home, doing my social media, answering interviews, you know, things of this nature. This is my work time. So you know, it sounds simple. It's not always that simple. When I'm on deadline, I get up really early in the morning and try to fit in some hours in the morning. I will go on writer retreats to try and get blocks of time where I can just write for a couple of days in a row. I'll work at night after the kids go to bed. So, you know, again, I'm piecing it together, but for the most part, it is, you know, that's 6 hours that the kids are at school that I'm kind of pounding away at the computer.
Have you ever been on deadline where you've just said to your husband and said, like, I got to get out of here? Like, I'm out. I have to meet this deadline. Really?
Yeah, absolutely. And he's great. And I'm also lucky that he has a flexible enough schedule and is a hands-on enough parent that, you know, I can do that. And I've holed up at Chateau Alon before. I have driven down to Savannah to my parents' house. They live down there and they'll host me for these writer retreats and like leave food at the door and coffee, you know, in the morning. To just let me kind of get these words out because, you know, you guys know, as moms, like you do just have to carve out the time sometimes for work.
I did see Misery. I saw where he went to that, you know, cabin. Things didn't work out so well, but still, no. But I also remember one of my favorite writers is Maya Angelou, and you know, I was reading her before she, you know, was at Obama's inauguration. Like, you know, she's been a longtime author, and one of the things she said is when she's finishing up, when she's, you know, completing her manuscript, she always would rent out a hotel for like a weekend or an extended stay to make sure she got it done and didn't leave that room until it was finished. So it's interesting how you can let life's little I mean, think about when, you know, I try to check email, and then when I'm checking email or about to write an email that I want to send to Jenn, then when I get in the email, I see something else like, oh, I got to fix that. Oh, I got to handle that. Oh, I got to handle that. And then I forget at the end of the day, I never emailed Jenn, and that was my intention.
Right.
So I could see as a writer, just getting out of the house is a must.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, also when you're doing a creative pursuit, you know, your brain needs time to kind of unknot those things or just to kind of sit. Sometimes I sit and I'm staring off into space and it looks like I'm not working, but I really am like thinking and trying to like work on plot or character, whatever I'm thinking about. And if a child comes in to ask me for a snack, which seems like a really innocuous, like 2-second thing, I mean, it can knock my whole train of thought off. And I mean, it's really challenging. So, and I'm sure every mom can relate to that if they're in the middle of sending an email or a text and then a child comes in or interrupts, it really can throw things off.
I just want to reiterate something you just said for those who are creatives in our audience, the fact that you allow time to just unknot those things, because I think for a lot of people, they don't understand the creative spirit. It needs to be away from a structure, right? Art is the absence of structure. And so, I think for a lot of people, they think, oh, if I sit down, then this just going to pour right out of me. And that's not how art works.
Right. That's exactly right.
And I was thinking about it too. It's a great metaphor for anyone who wants to do something creative or start a new project, whatever that might be. Not necessarily a book, but anything, is to really carve out that space to eliminate the distractions, whatever they may be, and give yourself that time. Because as mothers, there's so often we just don't allow ourselves to be the priority. Right. And of course, our kids are a priority. We're in love with them. We would do anything for them. But it's okay to set that aside every once in a while to create space for yourself. Do you find any guilt around that?
Oh my gosh. When am I not feeling guilty is the right question.
I'm there too.
Yeah, I do feel a lot of guilt. I think it was worse when they were really little and I felt like, I had to be there 24 hours a day. So like, even when I was, spending time with them and my brain was thinking about the story I was working on, I felt so much guilt. And then if I was in my office and actually had time to work, then I was feeling guilty that I wasn't spending time with them. It was like nothing I did was good enough. That has lessened, as they've gotten older and they have their own interests and, there's a little bit more time spent away and it's okay because I know that they'll be all right. But, oh yeah, guilt constantly.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It's like, we got to either just let it go or accept it. And this is where we are.
There's Go ahead.
Sorry, to your point, what you were saying earlier, Melissa, is, I think, yes, guilt comes along with it. But one of the ways that I make myself feel better is by saying, if I did not do this creative pursuit, which also is making money for my family, I would not be kind of a whole person for them, and so while, yes, there is guilt, I also feel like I am, being true to myself and feeling like a better present mother when I'm with them because I am, kind of nurturing all sides of me, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think your kids eventually will understand and appreciate that because kids want to know you, especially when they get older. You want to know your mother as a person, not just as your mom, right? But there's, speaking of mom, something that Jenn has said to me in her parenting, and I'm not sure if it was on air or off air, that I think relates to this, and it's the fact that she doesn't want to overschedule her girls so that they can be bored sometimes because that's where imagination comes from, right? I'm paraphrasing. Hopefully, Jenn,
that's true.
But and I think that as an adult, don't you have to remember to do that for yourself? There are times where you need to be bored in order for inspiration to come up, and not be afraid to do that for yourself.
Yes, 100%. And God, Jenn, I love that you say that because Fred and I do the exact same thing with our kids. And it's hard because it's so easy in our society when a kid comes up and says they're bored and they're whining to hand them a device, to say, go turn on the TV, to like take care of that problem so that you don't have to hear them whining that they're bored. But 9 times out of 10, if you wait it out 15 minutes, 30, sometimes an hour with my kids, eventually they will find something to do. And then it does feel very satisfying that they realize they can entertain themselves and they have these great imaginations that they will rely on and serve them well in the future.
Yes, I've been heard in my house saying my job is, as your mom, is not to entertain you. That is not my job as your mom.
It's to entertain other people, but not you.
Right. So, Colleen, let's dive into your family a little bit. Tell us about your 4 kids and their ages, and tell us about your family dynamic.
Yeah, so I'm married to a wonderful man named Fred. We have 4 children, which we still can't believe some days. It's still shocking to us that we have 4 children. My oldest is 11. I have my son is 11. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and then I have twins that are boy-girl twins, and they are 6.
How cute. Now,
Oh,
the
it's so
uniqueness of
cute.
your family is the
Mhm.
fact that your husband is African American and your children are racially mixed.
Right.
And so, we want to talk about that for a second because when we were going to have you on the show, I was telling Jen that one of my dear friends is an African American woman who
Mhm.
comes from a mixed family. Her father white, her mother African American, and she decided to have children before she got a husband. She's like, I want I don't need, I don't want the man right now. So she got a sperm donor, but she's dark skinned and her siblings are light skinned. So she was like, all right, let me get a white donor so that I can at least have my son feel like he's a part of this family. And she got what she wanted. She's like, I'm still the darkest skinned of everybody because my son looks like he's my sister's kid and not my kid. But still, it's through her that I understand, or I began to have an awareness, let me say,
Mhm.
of how the world portrays mixed race families. Because it, as a white girl with 2 white parents, never crossed my mind. But she, after having her son, was very sensitive and very needing. She was searching to make
Mhm.
sure there were positive images for her son. So I was hoping maybe you could talk about that a little bit and if you feel the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And being a white woman who came from white parents, it's similar story to for me. Like when I married Fred and we had children, it's been such a learning process for me, and I'm still learning. I'll be learning my entire life because the truth is, I will never actually know what it is to be a Black person or a biracial person in this country. I have, you know, secondhand, very close secondhand experience watching my husband and my kids kind of navigate this world. But it's been very eye-opening for me. And of course, absolutely, one of the main things that you want to do is make sure that your kids see people of all races, see people that look like themselves. And so the one of the first things we did when we moved back to Atlanta was make sure that we picked a community that was very diverse. We live in Smyrna. We think it's wildly, out of a lot of communities in Atlanta, one of the most diverse socioeconomically, ethnically, racially. And so, we feel really good and comfortable that that they don't ever feel like they stick out. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
School, in the community, they have friends of all different backgrounds, which I think is really great and can be rare in America to find communities like that. So,
Right.
It's true. And I was talking to Colleen before we started and I was like, I feel like the topic of race is something that we should be talking about all the time. But I
mhm,
get very nervous talking about it because I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing. Like even yesterday before this podcast, I went and looked up, are you supposed to say biracial, mixed race, or multiracial? And I found every answer on the internet. And I was like, okay, all of them are
I
wrong.
didn't even think about it. I
I
probably
didn't
said that
even
completely wrong. I don't
that's
know.
I know. So I wanted to ask Colleen if you can educate us on what is the right verbs to the right terminology, or the most inclusive terminology, because I think we all want to do right and we
yep,
just don't want to stumble and screw up accidentally.
of course, for sure. And I want to say that I am not an expert on race, which I
Of
think a
course,
lot of
yeah.
people, because I happen to be married to a Black man and because my children are biracial, I do have a lot of friends that come to me with questions, which I'm happy to share knowledge that I have gained over the years, but I certainly am not the expert. And, when it comes to my family, I don't care what you call us.
Right, right.
Like it doesn't offend me. And again, that's probably or could be due to my privilege. It's very hard to offend me. I've not had to deal with all these questions
Mhm.
my whole life, or microaggressions, or different things that Black people in this country unfortunately have to deal with on a daily basis. So yeah, multiracial, biracial, interracial, I'm great with it all. And I also feel like my kids, we talk to them a lot. We talk about race a lot in this house. but they'll have terms that they feel comfortable with and how they will identify themselves. Maybe it will be Black, maybe it will be biracial. I don't know, but I feel like as they get older, they will get to make those decisions for themselves.
You know, I am a lesbian and my son has 2 moms. And so, you know, we struggled in the beginning with how do we bring up the topic to him? Because the one thing you don't want your child to feel is different. And so it's like, okay, if we say something to him first, is he going to feel different because we made it different? Do we wait till somebody else says something and then we are playing on the defense and it still seems like a betrayal to him that we didn't prepare him? You know, so I mean, struggled with how to handle this. And by the time we were halfway to making a decision, our son expressed to a stranger that he had 2 moms. And so we realized he understood. And just the other day we were at the pool and he met a new kid at the pool and he told the kid, "Hey, I got 2 moms. This is one of my moms and my other one's somewhere else." And he's like, "Okay, cool." And they start playing. So, you know, talk a little bit about, you know, maybe your struggle with your husband on how to address these issues and how people who don't have difference in their homes, like their children are part of the majority, how they can still help their children, you know, be good to our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to your point, I love that story, Melissa. That's so fantastic. You
A
know,
story of overthinking it. Yes. I have plenty of those.
we all do. As parents, no matter what's going on in your home, we're overthinking every parenting decision,
Yeah.
right? It's just what the nature of it is because we want to do it right. So, but interestingly enough, the thing is, kids are wildly observant. So whether you say anything or not, they're not blind, right? Like they understand, you know, if things look different in their household as to somebody else's household. So, you know, I always made sure that, you know, books are a big deal for me. I'm an author, so my kids have grown up with books. So I always made sure that even their picture books had different families in them, different colored people in them, different ethnic backgrounds in the book, so that it wasn't just and dolls, you know, toys, everything. So I was very conscious of that, but wasn't ever quite sure when to introduce like concepts like racism. I mean, do you want to tell a 3-year-old that somebody might not like them based on the color of their skin? You know, I didn't have any knowledge of when to do that. But interestingly, my children were the ones to bring it up first, in that they would go, "Mommy, you have peach skin. I have tan skin. Daddy has brown skin." You know, like they know the difference. And so then I think, and I do think this goes for every parent, no matter what your race or ethnic background is, our job is to make that difference normal and okay.
Mhm.
So if you have white children, I was raised, and I think you guys were probably raised during a time where I truly believe this, that Martin Luther King came before me and he fixed racism and that everything was okay. I mean, I remember thinking
Yeah.
this as a child.
Mhm.
I didn't understand. I knew that there were some racist people in the world, but I definitely didn't understand systemic racism. You know, didn't understand unconscious bias, like didn't understand any of those really complicated concepts that a lot of adults have trouble understanding. And I was also raised in a time where to bring up somebody's race was offensive. You didn't say, it was like this colorblind thing. You didn't say that person is Black. To even state like a fact is offensive. And so I think there are still a lot of white parents that kind of suffer under this, which is understandable because you were raised this way, that in this kind of colorblind is best, you don't bring up differences. But I think that is actually hurting the next generation of kids. So for instance, I've been on the playground before where a child has said to my son, you know, it's way back when he was like 2 or 3, "You have brown skin." And of course, my son's like, "Yeah," you know, but the mom like whisked the child away,
Oh.
you know, like,
Mhm.
"Oh, we don't know. We don't say that," which then I think tells that child that brown skin is bad,
Yes.
right? or pointing out brown skin or pointing out differences, that then has shame
Right.
and a bad connotation.
Right.
Where-
And the kid's like, I was just saying the same as like blue or purple, or
Right.
you're wearing a
Yes.
red shirt
What-
and I'm wearing a green shirt.
And
It's like,
everybody had good intention in that situation,
right.
right?
Exactly.
And you still exuded racism.
Yes, yes. Where that mom, if she had said, yes, yes, he does. And look, your skin is this color and his skin is that color. And everybody has differences and different skin and different hair. And, you know, we all have differences. And that's what makes the world go round. I mean, I say
Right.
that to my kids all the time. Isn't that wonderful? It's what makes the world go round. It would be so boring if we were all the same. So that was probably a very long-winded answer to
No, well, you brought up a great point, because I
true.
had the same feeling about MLK. Like, oh, he's the guy that stopped this, and it wasn't until I guess I was in high school when the "it's a black thing you wouldn't understand" mantra became popular, and I remember thinking, "What is it I don't understand?" You know. So I think, yes, I mean, we're still like Jenn. You know, Jenn's intention is absolutely pure, but she's still nervous because there are people who will attack you for being ignorant on these issues. And I said off air, I want us to get back to the point where we can be ignorant and educated and nobody be offended. But I don't know how we get to that point.
Right, right. Well, and I also think, unfortunately, you know, being called racist or somebody pointing out to you that something you've done or said is racist is now like the worst thing that you can be called. And so uh, your first thought or mechanism is to defend yourself. And no, I'm not, because I'm not a bad person. Like if somebody calls you racist or says something you've done is racist, you immediately go, no, I'm a good person. Wait, no, like you've misconstrued me. I'm a good person, which I think is part of the miscommunication. Like if somebody says to you, that was really offensive, you know, like that felt racist, our first inclination as humans should be, oh my gosh, let me pause. I certainly didn't mean to offend you. I need to do some introspection on why that was offensive and how I can do better. Do you know what I mean? But our first, as white people, our first inclination is to get our hackles up. No, I'm not. You can't call me racist.
And that can be part of the privilege too, because we're not
Right.
used to being told that we're wrong.
Exactly.
And as white people.
As white people, but I also think it's especially for white women, because we are taught and told that we are supposed to be nice and kind, and that is our value in this world, right? Is being nice and kind. And so if somebody calls you racist, which is the opposite of being nice and kind, it's like, no, like absolutely, you know, like it's really hard to deal with.
But like you said, being able to internalize that and say, you know, is this an unconscious bias? Did that thing that came out of my mouth, how do I rework that? And it's almost like a rewiring, and being accepting of needing to rewire.
Right.
But I love what you said about celebrating difference, because that is the difference from how we were raised. We were raised about being polite, right?
Yeah.
And not talking about it. And I know from, you know, my parents' generation was better than my grandparents' generation. And so I think the charge for our generation is to stop ignoring difference, but celebrating difference. And I love the way that you said that. Tell me about what you've learned from your husband.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I mean, I've obviously learned so much from him about race and other things.
Of course, yes.
But you know, I didn't realize, I think, how often he deals with racism. And I'm not talking about, you know, the people in the white hats and the, you know, like the outward,
You mean the pointy white hats? That kind of, yes.
the what
The obvious.
racism,
Right.
obvious racism, but just like little comments here and there that if you hear them all the time can just really kind of be defeating. And you know, when we really talk about it and I really hear what it is like to be an African American, or what it can be like to be an African American in this country, it is a little bit disheartening. You know, but I will say that I do think, I don't want to be like downtrodden, completely pessimistic. I do think that each generation gets better and better. Look at my family. Like, we have never dealt with outright racism. Nobody has ever called us names. We don't get stared at when we go out in public. Like, which is a huge difference. 40 years ago, an interracial couple would probably not even dream of going out to dinner in public. So I do think with each generation, we get better. I do think most people are good people and want to learn and do better, and everybody get along and not have racism in this country. So I think there's a lot of optimism moving forward for even our next generation to be even better.
And I know that, this podcast is dedicated. I mean, we're all white women and we're talking about this from a white perspective, and you being married to a Black man. And we definitely will have future episodes where we get the Black perspective and, like a reaction to what we're saying today. But the other thing too is to pay attention to your own house. I mean, if you're somebody who is in a white house, pay attention to what you say when your children are within earshot. You mentioned, Colleen, about how children are wildly observant. I mean, we all were. That's how I learned more from watching my parents than hearing my parents, telling me something. And I was lucky enough to be in a household that did not see a Black person on television and then say something derogatory about it, or hear about a Black person in the community and say something derogatory about it. But I have friends who grew up in those households. And so that's the thing, that systemic racism, what people don't understand is, like, how do you talk about differences? Like Jenn said, how do you react to somebody on television? Even if you don't mean to say something derogatory, how does your children, what is their interpretation of what you just said?
Right.
My baby mama and I've had that conversation before about saying words that we might think are funny, but our son is going to take literally, and it has nothing to do with racism, but other things. And so we've tried to be very careful about what we say around him so that we're morphing something in his mind that we never intended. So I think that everybody who is not Black, or is what I'm just going to say white, because this could be for any race.
Mm-hmm.
If you're part of the majority, then you need to be very careful what you say in your own home, because to me, that is the source of the majority of the problems we have.
Yeah, I agree. And I think education too. I wanted to go back to your point about when we were talking about when to introduce these concepts to kids. One thing that has struck me, being a white person and now having Black children, is I don't have a choice about whether or not to talk to them about racism, because I have to prepare them for the reality of the world that they're going into. White parents do have a choice. Like white parents never have to talk to their white children about racism if they don't want to. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so a lot of people don't, because it's uncomfortable. And I've heard, I don't want my 8-year-old to know that the world is that terrible yet. Well, I don't have a choice for my 8-year-old to know that the world is that terrible. And I think if we all parents went in with the thought of we don't have a choice, then I think that the world would be a better place in just one generation or two, because I think it comes down to education. If Black children are being raised knowing that there is racism, knowing America is a systemically racist society, and white children are being raised not knowing that it's a systemically racist society, then it makes the clash much more likely to happen as they become adults. Whereas if everybody was dealing with the same knowledge, then they could work together to combat racism in America.
And where do you think that entry point is for kids? Is it talking about history? Because I feel like in the conversations with my daughters so far, that's the way the race conversation has come up, is learning about history, learning about the history of our country, learning about Dr. King. And those have been some of the kickstarters for those conversations.
Yeah, I think history, but then I also think bringing current events into it too, so that they don't think like I did as a child, that was all in the past and everything's fine now. Like bringing up some of the current event issues, which are hard. And listen, again, I'm not the expert. I go online a lot of times trying to find expert opinions about how to talk appropriately with different age children. Like when the George Floyd thing happened, how do we do this, I don't want my children to be terrified of the police, but I
Right.
also need them to be aware, and protect themselves. And, so it's all of these fine lines and figuring it out, just like you talk about any difficult subject with your children. So again, I'm certainly no expert, but it's I think it's worth looking into for every parent.
Well, it seems like there's a fine balance too of I saw somewhere, and didn't have to do with race, but had to do with some event that maybe it was 9/11. I'm trying to think of where I heard this advice for children during that time, and it was all children want to do is feel safe. That's their number one goal, is they want to know they're safe, and if they feel safe, then they can thrive. And so in these conversations too, it's like you said, there's a balance of reality, but it's also there has to be hope involved in that conversation, because our children very well will be the ones to do so much better. My mother did not meet her, she told the story with so much embarrassment, but she was raised in a rural country community, and the first Black man that she met was not until she was like in elementary school. And when she saw him, she screamed because she didn't know what to expect when this man walked up to her, and because he was a friend of her father. And I think my grandfather was like, I never even thought to prepare my daughter for this, and the reaction. So she told that story her whole life with, like I said, a great deal of embarrassment. And then we evolve into her grandson. He's the only white boy in his class.
Mhm.
So, there is an evolution. It's hard to see it when you're living it. History shows it very starkly. But, I do think that in conveying it, even, regardless of what your household is, I think not giving so much of your fear to your children to the point of them being paralyzed by it.
Right.
I think that is going to the extreme on the other end too.
Yep. Completely agree.
So, Colleen, tell us could we maybe get some of your recommendations for the children's books that you all have read in your house? I would love to put those in the show notes later.
Yes, I actually don't have titles off the top of my head, but I have a slew. Can I email them to you and you can
Yeah.
add them to the show notes?
You're an
Yeah.
author. You're an author. You should. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. I'm joking.
No, I don't expect you to have them memorized. No,
But
I was just
agree.
thinking that would be really cool recommendations, because you might have some books on your shelf in your house that we don't yet in ours,
Yeah.
and would be really helpful to know.
Absolutely.
So that'd be awesome. And so, speaking of books, we've got to talk about your books and your latest book, which is so good, Melissa Carter. You are going to love it. It's The
Yay.
Invisible Husband of Frick Island.
I love that title.
Juicy, it's lovable, it's heart-wrenching, it's all of the above. It takes you through. I mean, there were some pages where I'm laughing and other ones where I'm crying. I mean, it's just, yeah, so great. So tell us about the inspiration for your characters. Do they come from people you know? I mean, how do you get started on developing these rich characters in your books?
Yeah, so none of my characters in my books are based on real people yet.
Right. That's what you tell your family.
But I do think that, like most authors, most fiction writers, definitely you steal fun little quirks and characteristics for some characters from people in your life, sometimes on purpose and sometimes just completely subconsciously. Like I won't even know I'm doing it, and maybe I'll go back and read and I'll be like, oh my gosh, that's just like my friend, so and so or whatever. But yeah, they don't come from real people, so everyone who knows me can take a deep breath.
There was this podcast where these women just kept asking me about. No,
I know, right? Well, what is your favorite part of getting a book out? Like, is it the writing process, or is it once it's on the shelf? And I mean, like, do you go into a bookstore and just kind of, check, and then you see your book up there and you're just kind of, I would totally be spying that aisle and seeing if anybody comes up and looks at it, and then, get my feelings hurt if they put it back on the shelf and walk on, but what is your favorite part of this process?
Yeah. I mean, seeing your book on the shelf is probably one of the ultimate rewards, right? Because writing a book, I always compare it to running a marathon. It's not a sprint. Like this is it takes me like a year and a half to get a book out into the world. It's a slog. It's a lot of words. It's a lot of pages. And so that final, holding the book in your hands, seeing it on the shelf, getting emails from readers. It's very, very rewarding. I would say, much like I would think finishing a marathon would be. I've never done it and I don't plan to do it. I think that'd be very rewarding.
Well, it's almost like when I think of the summer and the Olympics, in Tokyo, and you see this when they allow you to see the podium, ceremony. It as you say that, I think of, you can see the look on their face when that medal's finally over their neck, because how many years of training went into that 10-second, motion of wearing a medal. So,
exactly.
yes, I could see where it's here's your medal, Colleen. You have a new book. You've won the gold.
And you've got to tell Melissa this amazing process where your books become movies, because Hollywood has bought Colleen's books before. So which ones do they have contracts on for movies, and how does that world happen?
Well, I'm still learning about that world. It's a whole different beast from the publishing industry. And You Were There Too, which was my third book, was bought by Reese Witherspoon's company, Hello Sunshine, and which was wildly exciting. But, what I've learned is that I think something like 90% of books that get bought to be turned into movies or TV shows don't actually get made. So the studio or the company will buy the rights to the material for like a year and a half, depending on what's in the contract. And they'll work very hard at maybe getting a script, getting a director attached, getting an actor or actress attached to the work, and hopefully start the ball rolling on it getting made into a real, movie or TV show. But maybe it won't. So I just have fingers crossed. I'm hopeful. Frick Island is out with a couple different producers right now, and we're hoping for an offer soon. Who knows? It would just be wildly exciting if one day I get to look up at the screen and see my book made into a real movie.
We'd have to do a premiere for it, Jenn. I mean, not that you asked us to do that for you, but just saying we might have to have a Friendzy premiere for your book, but or your movie from a book. But I'm a part of a movie club, and that helped me get through the pandemic, where we meet on Zoom one night a week, and then we talk about the movie we watched during that week, and then we rotate who chooses for the next week. And then we watch it at our convenience. They get together and we talk about it. And in doing so, we've really gotten into it. Like in the beginning, it was just a way to drink and get together. But now it's like we really dive into the history of the movie and stuff. And majority of movies are based on books. I mean, so Hollywood really, relies on you, Colleen, and people to really create these stories. But it shows like there are some where they got optioned and made, and then that lease expired, somebody else bought the rights and did it. So yeah, this looks like it's another marathon, right? Potentially. Yes. But it's cool that you have more than one book out there that's being shopped around or being, had been sold. And so one of these at least, if not all of them, is going to get on the screen.
I hope so. And if you do a premiere party, I expect a podium and a gold medal at the
end. Yes. Colleen she's a writer, full circle. She finished that story, and you damn right I'll have a gold medal for you.
Would you get to be involved in any of the productions if they turn your book into a movie? Like, do you get to pick the lead character? Do you get to go to the red carpet premiere? Any of that
I'm told, no. Not at all. I do get to go to the red carpet premiere. That's in my contract. But other than that, I mean, I basically get no say. Now, apparently, depending on your director, they may want some input from the author, but not often. Which is probably a good thing, because if I was in charge of casting, Ryan Gosling would be in every movie playing every character.
Right. You'd be like, oh yeah, these are getting boring. Here's another one.
Well, and probably the reason for that too is I'm sure Hollywood's protecting themselves from being with an author that they would have a toxic relationship with, but also it's a different medium. So I could spend a month, if I'm a slow reader, which I am, I could spend a month with your book and that be a part of my life for a month, where on the screen it's an hour and a half. Mm-hmm. So there's so much out of a book that they would have to shave off in order to tell the story well. And I'm sure for a lot of authors, it's like, that's my baby. You can't cut that part. You know what I mean? So maybe they've learned their lesson and are just kind of, we'll see.
Yep. and that's what author friends who have had their material turned into movies, that is what they say, is that as the movie, that then becomes somebody else's baby, because it is a completely different medium, and you do have to let go of ownership and just be glad that the story is being retold in another way. That people liked your story enough to then retell it on screen. You have to kind of let go of ownership a little bit.
Jen, this is for you and me talking, because, but what it really irritates me about Hollywood is the fact that why in the world would you option a book and then change the story completely? Like the fans of the book are the ones going to see the movie, and because that's what offends me. That's and those movies don't do well. So anyway, that's not going to happen to Colleen's book. That's why I said
no. But she's going to be in that director's chair right next to the director.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Totally. 100%.
And she's going to let us on set. Maybe once.
We'll be the paparazzi. We'll be the paparazzi stalking Colleen outside with our cameras.
Exactly. Get these girls away from me.
So, Colleen, I know that a lot of people think they have a book in them. Mm-hmm. What would be your advice if somebody's just wakes up in the morning, they're like, they've got this burning desire, but what advice would you give somebody who wants to start?
Yeah, it's very challenging, I think, and I do think a lot of people have a book in them. Everybody has a story, even if it's your own life story. You have a story that you can tell that's a unique perspective to you. So I encourage people to write and write that story that's in their heart. But I think it's very overwhelming, particularly to people who are not used to writing. Like if your career has nothing to do with writing, or you don't keep a journal, it can be very overwhelming to start. So what I tell people is to open up a Word document and just write for 5 or 10 minutes a day. Carve out that time. But the key is doing it every single day, because if you let a day go by, then before you know it, a week's gone by, and then a month has gone by. You've lost the threads of the story. You start getting down on yourself, like, I can't do it. It becomes very overwhelming to even open the document again. And then you're just, it's gone. So go every single day into the document, even if you only write a sentence or two, even if you jot down an idea, even if you just have time to reread what you wrote the day before, because it's the momentum that's important.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's such good advice. So good.
Well, and I have done a children's book, Colleen, and that's simple.
I know. I have your children's book, Melissa.
Oh, really? Oh, yay. Well, I will let you know that Mr. Carter said to me just this morning, because his teacher surprised me by reading it to the class last week. And so he told me this morning, he said, Mama, you need to write another book. So it was very sweet. But I did tell Jenn, like, I challenge myself with fiction, because I tend to write more memoir. I do a column and it's all about my life, and on the air we've talked about. So I thought, well, let me challenge myself to fiction. And so this is kind of going to what your advice with people and being consistent. The challenge I have when I try to write fiction is I have a vibe in me one day. Mm-hmm. And I have this voice that comes out one day, but let's say the next day I'm looking at it and I can't I'm not in the same mind space as I was the day before when I was writing this down. So, furthering that, if people are going to start writing it every day, and I'm I'm doing fiction, mm-hmm. How do you maintain the voice of your character regardless of what your mood may be?
That's an interesting question. Sometimes people do it with music to get you back into that zone. If your character, there's a certain song that kind of reminds you of that character, or puts you in the mood that they're in, that can be really helpful. But the other thing I would say is sometimes you just have to push through that. Allow yourself to write poorly. Allow yourself to write a paragraph or a page that is not flowing with the vibe of what you had the day before, because you can always edit it. You can't edit a blank page, but you can edit bad sentences and turn them into something good. The other thing I would say is that maybe that's not your novel, right? Mm-hmm. Like maybe you're trying out different things and you haven't found the one that's going to stick. Maybe you have, but maybe you haven't. And maybe allow yourself that next day to write something completely different and see if that's the thing that's going to stick. or maybe that completely different character is going to fold into your novel somehow.
Colleen, but I'm a woman. I have to be perfect from the very start. Okay. So as soon as it's on the page, it's got to be perfect. So what are you telling me?
Right?
Yeah, and published.
It has to go all the way through and be a bestseller, or else I'm never doing it.
What is this crap you're telling me? I'm done with this interview. I'm just kidding.
Listen, Melissa, I'm writing my 5th book right now, and every day I sit down and feel that way. Like, what?
Still,
why just be perfect when it comes out? Why is this terrible? I'm supposed to be good at this. So when people tell me that, when people tell me I'm writing and it's awful, I say you're doing it right.
Because you're actually writing. Yes.
Yep.
That is awesome. All right. Well, I want our audience to go find out more about you and buy your books, of course, at ColleenOakley.com. You can also follow her at writer Colleen Oakley on Instagram and see this beautiful family we were talking about earlier.
I know. And okay, Colleen, you're not out of the woods yet because you're on the hot seat because we do the Friendzy 5. So it's 5 questions that allow our audience to get to know you even better. And it's questions that nobody else is asking. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. The first question of our Friendzy 5 is, where is your cozy, happy place?
In my house, on my couch, snuggled up with my kids and watching movies.
Oh, sweet. Number 2, what's your favorite framed thing in your house?
Oh, this is easy. So my first house with my husband that we purchased together was in Knoxville, Tennessee when we first
go Vols.
And it was this adorable 1926 Spanish casita. We only lived there for like a year and a half, but I loved this house. And as a gift, when we moved, my aunt, who's a very gifted painter, painted the house for us and framed it. And it's just, it's the beginning of our relationship, and it's just beautiful. So many good memories in that house.
Oh, yay. I love that. Number 3, what's your most memorable birthday?
Oh gosh. I think 40, which was last year, because now I'm old and that's how far back I can remember.
Welcome to the best decade.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. My husband turned our basement. It was during the pandemic, right? So we couldn't go out. We couldn't, quarantine wasn't happening, but, we didn't want to go out to restaurants and all of that. So my husband turned our basement into an Italian restaurant. Unbeknownst to me, it was a complete surprise, and invited our very best couple friends over, and we had a great time.
Oh, that's an awesome idea. Number 4 of our Friendzy 5 is, what's a daily routine or ritual that you stick to?
Coffee every single morning. Boring, but true.
No, and writing, because that counts. And number 5, what fashion trend did you jump on? And this could be any age.
So many. Probably the worst and most embarrassing was the grunge trend in high school, and I was the girl in No Fear t-shirts, if you remember that brand.
Yes.
And flannel tied around my waist. You never wear it. You don't actually put the flannel shirt on. You just,
because that'd make you a lesbian, Colleen. That's what that would do.
This might also make me a lesbian. I also wore socks with Adidas flip-flops with the flannel and the No Fear. I don't know. In high school,
you were so cool. You were the cool girl. Everybody's like, Mom, I need socks that go with my flip-flops so I can be like Colleen.
Yeah. Well, because they were Adidas
for fashion advice for sure.
Yeah, because they were Adidas, that doesn't make you a lesbian. If it's a different brand, that might,
Birkenstocks. Birkenstocks
for sure. For sure.
I have Birkenstocks.
I'm just kidding. I'm joking. I'm a lesbian. I'm joking.
Fantastic. That's it. You're out of the hot seat. Great job on the Friendzy 5. Yay. Wonderful.
Job.
Well, Colleen, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a really awesome conversation. And everybody, I encourage you to go read her novels. They are wonderful. They will take you and whisk you away to another story. And sometimes it's just the escape we all need.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you to the Friendzy team. I'm so grateful to have been on.
So I really enjoyed that conversation with Colleen. I know she was nervous talking about her family feeling vulnerable. So I appreciate her doing that, because I really do think that, and we've said this before, that when you feel nervous about telling your story, more than likely you're going to have a bigger impact with it, because you are feeling vulnerable. And I know a lot of people will be touched by that. not think about some of the things she brought up. And I think, again, for us to be able to have these conversations and be able to learn, be coachable on everything, regardless of your race. It's not just white people that have to be coached, right? It's everybody needs to be coachable. And I think we do it together. That's what, Friendships Over 40 is all about. We can have these conversations. But I'm also fascinated by her writing life, and the fact that we may have a event that's going to be a premiere for one of these books is going to have a movie. I know it.
And we're throwing the party.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We are throwing the party for sure. Well, and there were a lot of takeaways for me from this conversation. I think what Colleen said about books and making sure the books in your home have representation of all cultures, and making sure that you're not just defaulting to what is, on the front of the shelf at Target or on the front of the, Amazon list, that you're really thoughtfully and intentionally choosing what your kids are reading at any level, whether your kids are, and also for yourself too. Are you reading authors that are of all races and cultures and reflecting that for your kids? One thing that she brought up that I think is a big deal is dolls. Now, I don't know if this is in your world, Melissa, because you have a son.
I
and
offered it.
I'm guessing
in
he's
my
not
world.
playing with a ton of dolls.
I offered it because I felt like that's something that we force upon boys and girls to do stereotypical things. So he had access to them, and he just wasn't into it.
I mean, kids are into just what they're into, right? So sometimes you can present all the different toys and they're going to just gravitate to what they're naturally interested in. And my kids love playing with their dolls. They love setting up, and they play with like the American Girl dolls. And then what are the knockoff ones at Target? They're called something else. Those are the ones we have most of. But what I will say is that I have intentionally in the last several years tried to make sure we have all mixed races. My husband is from Hispanic heritage, so our last name is Rivera. And on his father's side, his grandparents immigrated from Cuba and Puerto Rico. And so he has darker skin, and my older daughter has darker skin. Now, my younger daughter tends to favor me more and has lighter skin. But I have wanted to make sure that their dolls reflected them as well. And I will tell you, it is harder to find dolls that aren't white. It just is. And it's so bizarre to me. I mean, when you put it on your radar and you start thinking about it, and we celebrate difference, like we talked about with Colleen, how do we celebrate difference with all the things around us? Like when you get a birthday present and a new baby doll, and you open a new baby doll that has a different skin color, this is celebrating difference. But it is much harder to find.
Yeah.
And it was shocking to me when I really started paying attention.
Well, and that's why we have to, again, being coachable is the fact that instead of, I'm a firm believer, instead of having that knee jerk, I already know you don't, it's like Colleen said, people have this defensive mechanism a lot of times when they're trying to, their mind to be expanded, and you have to stop that. I mean, maybe it's a natural resistance, but you have to stop it and allow to go past it and then actually learn something. Like you said, I mean, why would you ever think that unless, but again, in your situation, you have multicultural backgrounds in your family, in your heritage. And, I'm just white as white comes, right? And so I think, but, one of the great things for me, I've always said that being a lesbian helped me so much, because I think if you're a part of any kind of minority, then it brings or should bring a sensitivity to other minorities.
Right.
And, for me, it's been also about gender, because my son has two mothers, so he's got plenty of estrogen, going on, but in representation in books and toys, I've wanted to make sure that I show as many female heroes as male heroes. And, like for instance, PJ Masks, that's very popular with kids, and there's two boys and a girl. He naturally had Owlette as his favorite. So Owlette is the girl. And, her name's Amaya, that's her person character. And then, and he loves Amaya even more than Owlette. Like, I think he has a little crush on Amaya, but he asked me, this is years ago, he's a little outgrown it, but he asked me for a costume for Owlette. And so I'm like, you absolutely can have a costume for Owlette. Now, I didn't say anything to his family about it, like his extended family, but I remember having a little like, please don't screw this up. Please don't say anything to him
they'd
about
say anything.
I
about
thought they were
it.
going to screw it up and make him feel self-conscious.
Right.
I was so relieved that all of his family members were like, "Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Who is this?" And was embracing. And then for kindergarten, he had an Owlet backpack. So, the fact that we celebrated the fact that his favorite superhero for a long time was a girl, and that was okay, because
Mhm.
we don't tell girls it's not okay to be fans of Superman and Batman and those things. And so I just think, again, people think it's weak to be sensitive. People, we all have the culture, and we see it, we see it in parts of our culture of people who think it's, we're tearing people down by being so sensitive to everybody, and people getting their feelings hurt, and kind of making fun of the fact of what we're trying to do. But
Well,
all
that's
we're
just a cynical perspective that really has no
exactly,
room here, especially with what we're talking about with it, friendships and doing better and being mothers and raising a
exactly.
new generation that can celebrate difference.
Hmm.
I think that cynicism and a resistance to change and growth is a reflection of ignorance.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree
You
with you.
know,
I think that I think that we have allowed the lesser intelligent part of us as people. I'm not saying, there's we all are guilty of times of letting our lesser intelligence take over. And I think that we were really showing that you are intelligent, whoever you are intelligent, and you can use your intelligence to its biggest potential. And by doing that, you realize that everybody deserves a place at the table.
mhm.
There was some quote, and I don't know if it's Audre Lorde, I don't know who said it, but it basically said, if you don't have a seat at the table, then you're the one being served at the table. So everybody deserves to have a seat and to break bread with each other, regardless of where you come from. And we need to teach our children the same thing, and help teach other
Absolutely.
children the same thing. So,
And we are going to share some of Colleen's children's book recommendations in the show notes. So if you want to diversify your library and you've got young kids like we still do,
yeah.
then that may be something. But if you're a grandparent and you are buying gifts for grandchildren as well, this might be a list that you want to take a look at. And just think about that. I mean, growing up, I didn't have any dolls that were of any other color. And I don't think that that
Mm-mm.
was any other reason than my parents just didn't think of it.
Right.
I mean, I
And
had all white Cabbage Patch dolls,
yep.
and we just didn't even it doesn't cross your mind until it crosses your mind. And then you can do better, right? We can't do better if we don't know better. But
Right.
then once you know better, you got to do better.
I will say because I'm a little older than Jen, and so Cabbage Patch dolls derived from what was called adoption dolls. I don't know if you were familiar with adoption dolls.
No clue.
So Cabbage Patch dolls kind of stole the adoption doll idea, and that was basically you made your own doll, and that was something we did in Girl Scouts. Now I don't remember
Cute.
having one. I don't know if my skill set was good enough, but I do remember having a diverse Girl Scout troop, even in my small town. I mean,
That's awesome.
I had a diverse group of friends, and in our neighborhood, fortunately, had a diverse group of people. And so my African American friends made African American dolls as adoption dolls. So basically, it was you made your own doll, you gave it a name, you gave it a background, and it was like you adopted this doll from the Cabbage Patch.
Sweet.
And so Cabbage Patch kind of took that idea and made a company out of it. But so that was an opportunity. So it just made me think that when you could make your own, you could reflect who you were in your doll.
Mhm.
When Cabbage Patch came along, they whitewashed it, right?
Mhm.
And the same with American Girl. Now, I don't know. I'm not familiar with American Girl. I remember the books back in the day, but I'm not familiar with what, the dolls that came from it.
And I think the ones at Target, it came to me, are called Our Generation
Okay.
dolls. And there's a few of different races and cultures and background, but it's not as much as it needs to be.
Well, and we could talk about this all day, but one of the things that I'm still shocked by, and I still see in the news, is African American kids who get in trouble because of their hair, like the hair culture, like the fact that we
They
still
get in
can't
trouble?
embrace. There are some schools that won't allow braids, won't allow, especially for boys, won't
What?
allow traditional African hair. And I
That's
struggle
insane.
I struggle with that because I'm like, first of all, I've got straight hair. And so especially when I see afros and natural hair, there's a part of me that's like, oh, my hair's so straight and your hair's so curly and that looks so beautiful. And I wish I had curls in my
You're
hair.
jealous.
Yes. But I don't. to me, it goes back to what you said, embrace difference.
Mhm.
What is the problem? Just because you don't style your hair a certain way, or you can't, white hair can't do some of the things that black hair can do. And just because our boys and girls who are black, who are trying to have a hairstyle that they want to have, I don't understand. But yes, there are stories in the news about,
That's insane. That is so
yes.
crazy. I've
So
never
anyway,
seen that.
so we're got a long ways to go, because the thing is, we just have to go exactly what Jenn said. Celebrate difference, whatever it is. Don't be threatened by difference, and don't be threatened by these conversations, and neither will we.
Yeah, take a chance to reflect on your life and make some changes where you can.
All right, now it's time to grab a question out of the You Don't Know My Life box. Okay.
Let's do it. I always get nervous.
All right, here it is. Describe a time when you fell down. Because that's just
Oh my gosh,
funny.
last week. Oh my gosh. I was such a klutz, and I ended up getting like a tiny strawberry on my knee from it. So I am such a ding dong. I'm trying to go back to the gym and get back in a workout routine. I had gone to this gym like once or twice, like it, but I'm still trying to be cool. I'm like the new kid, you're still trying to figure out, like where do I put my things? And it's like being the new kid in class, right? And I was following someone in. So she, is like definitely like 20 years younger than me, like prances up the little steps and is like holding the door for me. So I felt like I had to hurry, and I had like my keys and my glasses and my
no.
purse in my hand. And I was a little disheveled, and I turned and I saw that she was holding the door open for me. And I tried to run up the stairs, and I fell straight down on my knee. Splat.
Oh, honey.
Like a ding dong. And I totally split my fingernail off. And I was like, oh, how embarrassing. But I just bounced back up again. I'm like, I'm fine.
Because that's the first thing you do, right? I don't
Right.
want attention for this. No.
You can't admit that it hurts or that you might be bleeding, or you can't just sit and rest. You have to like pop back up and be like, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
That didn't happen,
Yeah.
everybody.
Forget it.
I'm
Forget
really
it.
not
Mulligan.
an idiot.
Mulligan. Well, I'm fairly coordinated. I will say that. I have friends who are klutzy. My new kitten that I've talked
Yeah,
about,
like me.
he's incredibly klutzy. It's funny to watch it in animals. He doesn't have a sense of balance, and he falls over all the time, which is very funny. But the two times that I injured myself, I'll talk, because I don't remember falling very often, but the two times I have been consistent in where I fell, and I injured myself both times. That was off a curb, walking off a curb. I don't know what it is about curbs.
Imbalance of space and time.
I
Your foot
guess.
doesn't know the distance.
And of course, that's when I hyper extend my ankle. So that gives you cringes anyway. But that happened both times. So I was in college, and I was coming out of some kind of gym class. Like I was an elective. I don't know. I forgot what I took. But I was glad that I had taken it, because I was limbered up. And so when I fell off that curb, I sprained my ankle, but it wasn't that bad. I got over it. I remember having orange juice in my hand. I spilled it, of course, because, you always have to, things fly when you fall.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was at Walt Disney World, and I was talking and walking, and then the sidewalk turned, and I didn't see the sidewalk turn, and I
just boom.
I fell into a bush. There was a bush right there.
Oh, man. And Disney's got cameras everywhere. So there's video of you falling into that bush somewhere.
And that's not cool, because you can't jump right up, because you're struggling to get out of the bush at the same time. And I had really injured myself. I had to wear a boot because I had torn like a tendon or something. And
oh, no.
But those are the two times I fell.
About the Disney, but I'm sorry for laughing about the bush.
You should have, because it's funny, because at the time it was just like when I'm face planting into a bush, I thought, because that is in your mind, I'm not thinking about the ankle. I'm thinking about, okay, I can't recover from this on a ego level. This is, this is not cool.
Yeah. Falls can be a shaming event, can't they? We're telling you, steal these for the dinner table with your friends.
Yes.
Steal these for your work meetings. They're great icebreaker questions as well. And it's your reminder to share your story. We talk about it each and every week on the Friendzy podcast. Open up about who you are, what your stories are. Share it with trusted friends, because your story matters.
I know a lot of people listen. We drop, new episodes of the Friendzy every Monday, and a lot of people use this segment for their motivation for the week. So Jenn has this week's mirror mantra.
Okay, it's quite simple. Just looking in the mirror and say, I'm going to celebrate differences between humans.
Yes.
So if someone points out that someone is different from you, I hope that this week your first response will be like, that's awesome.
Yes.
Rather than
Agreed.
recognizing difference as different, as weird, as odd or strange,
Or dangerous.
let's recognize difference as awesome.
And I think when I say dangerous, I'm also thinking about handicap, because there's a lot of people that will shy away from the handicap because they feel like, oh, if I'm comfortable with that, then something's going to happen to me. So I think that it's every difference. It's every difference. It's not just
Somebody
the way.
who's got tons of piercings.
Yep.
You see somebody who has tons of piercings or tons of tattoos or tons of something different than you, be like, that's awesome. That person is so different from me, and that's great.
Yeah, if their hair is different, like we mentioned, again, if their bodies are different, it's boring. Just think about the end result of not wanting things to be different. I mean, what are we doing? Do we realize what we're causing? It would be boring, and it causes people to be unhappy. So, yeah, and I think, I love your mantra. I'm going to also remind people to look at your friend group. I always say that I have a diverse friend group, and when we're on Zoom meetings together, I'm proud that all the boxes look different. So when my son comes up and is just interrupting to say hi to everybody, that he's already exposed to people of different races, different ages, in different genders, all in the same place for him to see. I just think some people use their personal lives as monochromatic as well. So great
That's
mantra.
true. Yes. So look in the mirror. I'm going to celebrate difference and say, that's awesome.
Is there a friend of yours who would enjoy this episode? Well, why not share it with her? It's pretty easy. Okay. I'm going to explain the Apple Podcast sharing because that's where most of our listeners are. But of course, we're everywhere. For Apple Podcasts in particular, look for the three dots at the top right corner. Still can't talk throughout this episode. So there's three dots. When you're looking at the Friendzy, you click on those three dots. There's a drop down menu, and you select where it says share episode, and then select the green messages option and text it to a friend. Again, if there's ever a time that you need our help and we want us to personally step-by-step help you, Melissa at thefrenzy.com and Jenn at thefrenzy.com.
And please check out our Friendzy YouTube channel. It's got videos and extended interviews. We'd also love for you to sign up at thefrenzy.com for our email list. If you subscribe, then we can send one message a week with the episode right to your inbox as a little reminder of hey, listen to the show this week. And we also put links in there of other things that you can explore. And the show notes are right in that email. So subscribe today at thefrenzy.com.
Look, Jen's in charge of that newsletter, and I love it because she's so good at it. And the other thing about the newsletter, we are experimenting with something new. It's a private Facebook page because we talk about friendships over 40. We know a lot of you were like, I need to meet some new friends. I just kind of, I'm kind of on my own here, outgrown my friends. So we're starting a brand new private Facebook group that Jenn and I moderate. So we make sure that it's women over 40 in there. And we want you to get to know each other. And hopefully the show will be the Cupids for people's new friendships, right, Jenn? So the only way, that's our hope. So the only way you can get that link to that private Facebook group is by subscribing to the Friendzy at thefrenzy.com. And 3 new names who we have on our subscription list, and we really appreciate it: Annette Montalongo, Elise Roth Tedeschi, and Ashley Parks. Thank you guys so much. And it's always nice to recognize some of these names that we have on our subscription list. So thank you.
Yes, exactly. Shout out to our friends. Okay, The Friendzy is hosted and produced by Melissa Carter and me, Jenn Hobby.
Hey, girl. Sound editing by Bo Johnson.
Original soundtrack produced by Tammy Hurt for Placement Music, written and recorded by Mark Daniels.
The Friendzy celebrates friendships over 40. This is a fun time of life. Make sure it is for you, and thank you for spending your time with us. We truly love your friendship.
Okay, until next week, trust your gut.
Share your story.
And
stop lying about your age. We'll see you next time.